The Donkey Doctrine in a world obsessed with fighter jets, satellites, and nuclear deterrence. Captain Ibrahim Traoré has chosen an unlikely weapon of sovereignty, the Donkey Dot. At first, the idea sounded absurd, almost laughable, but in Burkina Faso, it is already reshaping how people think about strength, independence, and survival. Traoré knows his country in a way few leaders do. He has walked the dusty roads of Sahel villages, spoken to farmers under the relentless sun, and seen firsthand how fragile life can be when a nation depends on foreign aid, imported fuel, or fragile infrastructure. He has watched modern machines, trucks, armored vehicles, and tractors stop dead when the roads collapse, the fuel runs out, or a single mechanical part breaks. And he has seen how quickly sanctions or blockades can choke a country into submission. So he asked a question no one else dared. What if our strength didn't depend on anything the outside world could take away? The answer came not in a think tank report, but from the fields. Donkeys stubborn, tireless, fuel-free. They can carry water, food, medical supplies, even weapons across terrains where modern vehicles fail. Mud, sand, rocky mountain paths, these are no obstacle to an animal that has carried human civilization forward for thousands of years. They do not require imported oil. They do not break down waiting for spare parts from Europe or China. They survive on little. In war or disaster, when everything else grinds to a halt, donkeys keep moving. Traoré's plan is not symbolic. It is industrial. Entire regions of Burkina Faso are being transformed into breeding zones. Millions of donkeys are being raised, supported by a network of veterinary centers and training programs for young workers and farmers. This is not just agriculture. It is logistics. It is strategy. It is resilience on four legs. And the world is watching. Foreign powers are puzzled, even unsettled. They understand tanks and missiles, but how do you sanction a donkey? How do you blockade an animal that grazes in the bush and walks over borders without a sound? In military terms, the Donkey Doctrine makes Burkina Faso harder to choke and harder to predict. In economic terms, it means less dependence on imported transport, more local jobs, and a backbone for rural commerce. TRA, or E-Acute, calls it independence you can saddle. And while the West debates, the herds grow. The unsanctionable animal, you can sanction oil. You can sanction banks. You can even sanction entire governments. But you cannot sanction a donkey. Donkey does not need imported fuel. It does not need spare parts from Germany or Japan. And you cannot bomb it without turning world opinion against you. Each one is raised on African soil, fed by African hands, using African resources. That makes it more than an animal. It makes it an asset of sovereignty. The Donkey Project is not just changing logistics, it's changing lives. Breeding millions of donkeys means creating thousands of jobs. Farmers tend the herds. Veterinarians keep them healthy. Blacksmiths forge carts, saddles, and harnesses. These are new professions for many rural communities, and they are pulling people out of poverty. Young men who once left for the cities are returning to their villages. They see a future here, one built not on foreign aid, but on work their own land can sustain. Schools are training the next generation in animal husbandry, cart making, and rural engineering. The result? Communities that were once dependent on outsiders are now building their own economic engines. The impact on agriculture is immediate. Donkeys carry seed, fertilizer, and harvests between farms and markets. Villages once dependent on trucks, waiting days or weeks for fuel to arrive, are now connected year-round by four-legged transport. This means more food stays local, less is wasted, and the country reduces its reliance on expensive imports. And then there's the trade potential. Donkey hides are in high demand in Asia, where they are used in traditional medicines and cosmetics, sometimes worth more than silver. Traoré knows the value, but he is no fool. He is not selling off his national herd for quick profit. First, Burkina Faso will use donkeys to feed itself, strengthen its transport network, and boost rural incomes. Only then will surplus production be traded, and only under terms that favor Africans, not foreign corporations. The vision is expanding. Mali, Niger, and Chad have sent delegations to study Burkina Faso's program. There is talk of a West African donkey corridor, trade, and transport network where goods move across borders without needing fuel, foreign trucks, or international shipping routes. Food, textiles, and tools could move from Mali to Guinea, from Chad to Senegal, entirely under African control. This is the kind of infrastructure the West cannot blockade, the kind China cannot buy, and the U.S. cannot sanction. And yet the mockery comes. Critics in Europe and America call it primitive, a step backward from modern industry. They laugh until you remind them that Western armies in Afghanistan, Iraq, and the Sahel relied on mules and camels for exactly the same reasons. When they do it, they call it adaptive warfare. When Africa does it, they call it backward. Traoré knows better. He is not building nostalgia, he is building resilience. And resilience, in an age of global fragility, is the most modern weapon there is. And lifeline in one. This adaptability makes them more than animals. They are strategic assets. And the vision does not end at Burkina Faso's borders. Traoré imagines a West, Africa bound together by its own transport network, free from the choke points of foreign-controlled fuel and infrastructure. Mali, Niger, Guinea all building their own donkey fleets. A continent linked by quiet, unstoppable caravans. This is African integration at its most practical trade routes that cannot be shut down by a distant capital dot. It is also a call to action. Farmers can breed and train the animals. Engineers can design carts and harnesses to increase their load capacity. Teachers can train the next generation in animal husbandry and rural transport systems. Leaders can replicate the model in their own nations. This is a project where every African has a role and where the collective effort creates independence that no foreign power can revoke. History proves the idea. Horses, camels, and mules once built empires and sustained armies. Modern militaries still rely on them in rough terrain. The difference is that when the West does it, it's innovation. When Africa does it, it's primitive. Traoré's plan rejects that framing entirely. He is not romanticizing the past. He is weaponizing its best lessons for the future. In Africa, the reaction is electric. Farmers, students, and workers see Traoré not as a president, but as a strategist for African survival. In the West, the reaction is confusion, because power to them is measured in missiles and markets. They cannot see that sovereignty can also walk on four legs. The road ahead China watches with interest. They see value not only in transport, but in the lucrative trade of donkey hides. Yet Captain Traoré stands firm. Any deal must serve Africa first, or not at all. Not everyone on the continent agrees. Critics call the plan too simple or old-fashioned. They say Africa should focus on satellites, drones, and AI, not animals. But they miss the point entirely. The donkey project is not a rejection of progress. It is the rejection of dependence. It is the choice to use what Africa already possesses to shape a future on its own terms. Yes, the challenges are real. Millions of donkeys require food, care, veterinary services, and trained handlers. The government must guard against exploitation by foreign companies who would strip the project for profit. But Traoré advances undeterred because he knows what is at stake, the sovereignty of his nation and the example it sets for the continent. If this succeeds, Burkina Faso will not just breed donkeys, it will breed a new kind of economy, rooted in local resources and immune to foreign chokeholds. Other African nations could build their own fleets, weaving a network of transport and trade beyond the reach of sanctions and fuel shortages. This could spark a broader revolution in thinking. If donkeys can secure independence, what other overlooked resources might hold the key to Africa's future? This is not simply a logistical plan, it is a declaration. Africa will not be defined by the West's measures of strength. Africa will find its own path, in its own language, with its own tools. So the question is no longer, can donkeys change Africa? The question is, will you help? Will you laugh from the sidelines? Or will you recognize the power in this quiet revolution? Will you wait for others to lead? Or will you take up the work in your own fields, workshops, and classrooms? The world is watching. Africa is rising. And the first steps of that rise may be taken on 4 steady hooves. This is not just the story of Captain Traoré. It is the story of a continent reclaiming its strength, of a humble animal carrying the weight of a vision too large for cynicism to crush, of an Africa no longer asking for permission to be great. The revolution has already begun. It is moving slowly, quietly, but it will not stop.